All right, we are live on another episode of the Edlow podcast. Hello, Scott Sereboff.
Hello, Mr. Edlow. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for coming on,
You bet.
Scott. You run Deeping Source, which is your new company. This is like the fifth or sixth one that you've started, but this one specifically, from what I understand, has to do with AI and surveillance.
That is correct. That is correct. And
And
if I can correct the record, the founders are actually out of Korea, a couple of geniuses with like 7 million patents or something around AI. But most of the patents are around effectively the anonymization of personally identifiable information within video and other forms of AI.
wow, so tell me, what is the you're actually collecting? This business is collecting personal information through AI to help better serve customers? Is that kind of what you're planning to do?
Yes. So let's parse that into two things. So first of all, uh, for people that don't know what the term means, right? PII, personally identifiable information, is a fairly new legal term, especially here, not so much in the GDPR countries, but it's basically any information that could be used to identify you as you. Your face is the most obvious one,
Mm,
right?
okay.
It would include biometrics like your eye, your fingerprint, your palm print. Now, what we do as a company, just from a business model, is let's take retail. It's the easiest. A retailer wants to know dwell time, how many people are in the store, interaction with staff. But if you're doing this in any place where you're concerned about identifying the person, there are countries where that's illegal to do unless the person's face is anonymized.
Hmm.
So when we talk about the ethical use of AI and our own stance on it, the idea is, look, I want to be able to tell the Gap how many people are in their store, et cetera. I just don't want to be able to tell the Gap who they are or give them a way to find out who they are.
Hmm. Okay. So, what is the purpose of gathering the information? What kind of information are you gathering?
Okay. Well, let's stick with the Gap example. So let's say that you and I are out shopping for wives. I don't know why we'd be at the Gap, but let's say we go there, and so we're out. When we walk into the Gap, I want to know where. And now I'm the store manager. I want to know where you and I go. Which direction do we travel? Where do we walk first? How long do we stop at a given display? Do we just blow past certain displays without even paying attention? Do we stop at other ones and spend an inordinate amount of time there? How long were we in the store? How many associates do we interact with? All of these are metrics that the store can then use to make adjustments to everything from the layout of product to the layout of the actual store to employee training. So
Hmm.
what really it boils down to the personalization of the shopping experience for the customer in the retail space more than anything else.
So, are you collecting? It sounds like you're not collecting personal data per se. You're not collecting who they are, where they live, things like that. You're just looking at how they interact with the store.
I could care less about you except for your sex and your
Uh,
generally your age group.
hmm.
Right. But so when you walk in, I don't want to know that it's Josh Edlow. What I want it to say is, male 40 something. Am I right?
Hmm.
40, 30,
Yeah,
30,
yeah,
40
you're right.
something.
You're
Right.
right. Yeah.
Male 40 something. That's it. That's all I care about. Male 40,
Hmm.
40 something, because that can help identify what might appeal. And there's another easy example. The when you're in a college football town and the games are on Saturday in the morning, there might be a run on pizza and beer, right?
Hmm.
Pretzels and
Hmm.
beer. So if you can identify that your customer base on that Saturday morning is mostly college aged males and females, you can adjust inventory and placement thereof to more fully take advantage of the shopper,
Hmm.
right? Fourth of
Right.
July, you want to put the beanie weenies and the buns and the hot dogs and the ranch dressing all close together.
Right.
So but what I don't want is I don't
Hmm.
want to have any way to know that you are you.
Hmm. Okay. Well, that's interesting. So now let's dig a little deeper into that, because obviously, well, let me ask you about the business. So how
Yeah,
long has this business before? It sounds like you're bringing it into America. It's been
that
in
is correct.
Korea.
Yeah,
How long has it been in Korea?
about 3.5, 4 years.
Okay.
With the caveat again being probably the first two were in silent mode while they were developing the tech.
Okay. Okay. And so how long has it been here in the U.S.?
September will be about a year since I started bringing it in.
Okay. And how's it going so far?
Actually, I think probably slightly better than I could have expected. It's a complex product,
Uh-huh.
and complex products always have a long sales cycle. But it is going very well because I think we're catching a lot of retailers and other market verticals at a time where this is starting to become really interesting. And one of the things that I did in getting us going was I work with a legal company called Aosphere. They're I think they're based in the UK, but we maintain a database of court cases across the world that are specifically related to PII and AI and all that, right?
Mm.
And so you must have heard of this. What was it? 2 months ago, White Castle got hit with a $1.7 billion biometric lawsuit judgment.
Really? I actually didn't hear about that. Tell
Oh,
me about it.
well, you can read lawyer, and I can't. So you got to
Yeah.
go. You got to go check out the court case. But so essentially, what happened was White Castle was using biometric identifiers for their employees to get into work. I
Uh-huh.
walk up to my White Castle job. I put my finger on the thing. Now, important side note, and you can explain this if I mess it up, but when you violate that particular rule, it's per incident, and the incident is when you do the finger touch. So if you
Mm.
do 4 a day for the whole year, that's 365 times 4, so you get
Right.
fined per incident,
Right.
which is where you get to the 1.7 billion. But they somehow lost control over the data, or they didn't ask for permission. I'm not entirely sure, but the upshot was they lost an Illinois derived, and Illinois has a tough data protection law. They lost an Illinois based lawsuit to the tune of $1.7 billion due to the number of offenses.
Wow.
Now, no one thinks it's going to stick, but it still sends the message,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So
Right.
for a company like mine, it's like, okay, it sounds terrible, obviously, but it's great for me because it's something I can use with other companies and say, hey, it can happen. And
Hmm.
here's how you can avoid having it happen in the first place.
Hmm. Yeah, and so what do you do to avoid something like that happening?
Well, in that particular case, you needed to have effectively a stronger legal document with your employees that stated that the biometric fingerprint use was going to be for the one specific thing. They didn't ask, they just
Mm.
installed them. And you also need to make sure that there is some. My fingerprint is unique to me, but you could tie my fingerprint to a employee number, which was tied to, the people hiding assets, right? Hide my identity. Push
Hmm.
it far enough away that all it knows is employee 6249 at store 11 clocked in.
Hmm.
There are ways to separate yourself, but because White Castle, when they put it in, didn't have to worry about it, by definition, they ignored it.
Mm. I see. Wow. So now, we talked a little bit about ethical dilemmas in AI, and AI is a big, it's all over the place. Chat GPT is something that you're hearing a lot more about. We were talking off air about this ability where you could take somebody's voice if you have a recording for a little while, put it into a system, and basically make people say whatever you want them to say. And we were talking about, my practice as an attorney, how that could affect evidence
Oh yeah,
in
100%.
in cases. Someone said something, did they really say it? How good do you foresee this really getting? Is it going to get to the point where it's indistinguishable?
I think there is a one of those inverse curves that the better it gets and the dumber we all get, the easier it is for it to be good. Look, we already, and not I apologize, I'm not trying to turn this into anything political, but if you think about it, let me go with it. we already live in a country where people question the truth,
Yeah.
right? Where a news report that you would have otherwise taken as the Walter Cronkite just the facts is questioned. And so when people are willing to ignore factual basis like a flat earther, then they will be correspondingly more affected by a deep fake, because those types of people that are going to be inclined to believe it will tell you you're lying, that's not a deep fake.
Mm-hmm.
As it gets better, now you when we were talking off air, you mentioned audio. So audio is already pretty easy. I can take a voice and I could insert it into a recording in such a way that it would be difficult to tell that it'd be difficult to tell it wasn't the person. You'd probably have to disprove it based on timestamps on the audio recording if you could find them and they hadn't been messed with. Video's not quite there yet, but it's not that far. And for your audience, if you go and Google Pope white puffy jacket, you'll see an image of the current Pope wearing what looks like a Balenciaga white ski jacket. And it fools everyone.
Wow.
Everyone thought, oh my God. Now, AI has a hard time with hands, and the hands are in the pocket. But there were literally people who were, oh, yeah, we believe it, until the guy who did it actually said, it's a fake. There's an artist who entered it was a photography contest. He entered a photo in, and he won the contest. And as soon as they called him up, he promptly said, I'm not taking the award because this entire thing was done by AI. I just wanted to see what would happen.
Wow.
So in your line of work with this, not everyone obviously, but there's better resource. Where I find myself more concerned is imagine your line of work, except instead of a lawyer, you're a political campaigner and can use audio and video for good or for bad, where it could be fake. It could be a presidential candidate being overheard saying all kinds of horrible things about, Indians.
Yeah. Well, and you also have the issue of maybe they really did say it and all they're going to say is that's a deep fake. I mean, you're hearing so much about fake news.
Very good.
Right?
Very good.
So right now you hear everybody calling everything fake news. I mean, who's to say, oh, that's a deep fake? I didn't really say that.
And you, of all people, as an attorney, will know that's exactly right. If you can make reasonable doubt on one side, you can certainly make reasonable doubt on the other side. And absent proof in either direction, who wins?
Yeah. Well, and when you're talking about in the context of a legal case, depending on whether you're in a criminal court or you're in a civil court, you have a standard of proof, right? And, in a criminal case, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. If you can say, I didn't really say that, that's a deep fake, that poses reasonable doubt.
But your standard is less because on the commercial side, the civil side, the standard burden of proof is less. So what happens when your client is going against the other guy and he says that video of me pocketing corporate funds to go to Tahiti is a deep fake?
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? It's hard because it could sway one or the other. My standard is more likely than not. It's 50.01%. So, I mean, if you got a 50-50 case and someone's got something, it could swing it one way or the other really easily. I mean, it's really scary. This AI, for some reason, to me, sounds incredibly scary for the future, for my kids, my grandkids, because, I mean, look, I think told you off air, like, I grew up on the Terminator, right?
Yeah, war games and yeah.
Yeah, and so who's to say how far off are we before AI becomes indistinguishable from reality, like Total Recall?
Okay, so let's try to break this down into some digestible chunks, right? So, First of all, we do not yet have generative AI in the sense that what generative AI means is effectively it's indistinguishable from human intelligence. Okay? We do not have that. You'll hear the term used, but it irritates me it's starting to be used to refer to AI that generates something like a piece of music, right?
Okay.
That's not what they mean. So until we have generative AI, it's very important to understand that AI is not intelligence. It is okay. I'm in court and I'm going against you, and we're doing a court case where it is filled with legal abstracts, things that can go all the way back to English common law, right?
Right.
The AI can look up and read every case with any smidgen of evidence or relevance from the beginning of recorded legality all the way forward. So it's not that it's intelligent, it's that it can read and parse data so much better than humans can. So an AI can pass the LSATs simply because it has the ability to look at every LSAT ever given and look at all the answers, et cetera. But that's not intelligence. That's just, hey, if I gave you an LSAT as an open book test, it's kind of the same thing.
Right. So it's
Okay.
just really data collection.
It's data collection, analysis, and delivery. So Chat GPT. So when I sit down with Chat GPT, and I've done it, and I'm too busy to write a blog post, so I say, hey, write me a blog post about, whatever. The Chat GPT learns how to write based on having read a bazillion things across the internet, and it's guessing what the next word is going to be based on experience, which, by the way, is how we talk. So it's not smart enough to be thinking, oh, I should say this. It's saying, well, there's a 98% chance that if I say this, it will fit. And so everything you hear about AI, and this is another important thing to realize, AI is a percentage chance that the system is right. If I run your face through a database and it says, yep, that was Josh, it doesn't say, yep, that was Josh. It says mathematically, I believe there's a 92% chance that that face belongs to Josh Edlow. That's not intelligence in a standard that we would see it. That's just a really smart database.
Got it.
It looks like intelligence to us because when you go on ChatGPT and say, hey, write an article about Scott, it goes on and researches and blah, 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 blah. But it does it so fast and you can do so many so quickly that per Isaac Asimov, it looks magical because it's so advanced. But have you read the NVIDIA financials, the fact they'll be $1 trillion company? My company uses NVIDIA GPUs. They're $9,000 each. So that isn't War Games, Terminator, where there's a program that sneaks in, etc. Not today, not yet. It's just the training. And the bad part about the training is all AIs have to be taught. So you and I both have kids. When your kid is born, they don't know how to do anything, and you're going to teach them.
Sure.
And they learn language by listening to their environment and then doing the classic, oh, my father is pointing at a dog and saying dog. Right?
Sure.
I've read psychological studies that say children associate their parents in their first few months of life as different versions of the parent: mad face, happy face, neutral face, and they actually see them as three different people for the first couple of months. So ChatGPT, every time you and I go into ChatGPT and say, write me this, if we correct it, it reads it. If we give it a thumbs up, it accepts it. And it's constantly scrolling through the internet looking for more learning opportunities. That's all. The first ChatGPT was terrible. Here's the problem. And this kind of goes back to what we were saying, and I've wandered, I apologize, but if I'm a member, which, oh my God, I'm not, of the American Nazi Party, I could write a ChatGPT that favored fascist language. Easy.
Wow.
Easy.
Right. So I guess for me, the thing is that I don't think anybody is really concerned about where AI is now. I think it's worried by as it gets exponentially better. I think it was Elon Musk who said if things get better 1% per year in AI, eventually it will become indistinguishable. So the question is does it have the capacity to become indistinguishable, and how far away are we from that?
I don't know if I agree with the ever seminal Mr. Musk on that or not. I
Uh-huh.
I The Turing test is going to be interesting because in some ways AI can pass it, but in some ways it can't. And the Turing test was also, he conceptualized that in what, the 50s, 54 or something.
Mhm.
So, which is the measure by which a computer is indistinguishable from a person. Um, so I do think that if it did get better 1% a year, there would come a point where, you know, we've all seen Star Trek movies or Star Wars, whatever, hey, computer, do blah, 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 blah. And it sort of interprets and kind of makes decisions and whatever. But you said something I'm gonna not necessarily disagree, but ask you to think of it differently. Now is exactly the right time, the perfect time to be worried about AI, because the big issue that we're facing isn't, in my current opinion, how good it gets. It's the indistinguishable part.
Mm.
So and you can't see because of my lovely background, but as a lifelong, long time, fun thing, I'm a musician.
Mm.
So as there's a positive with AI. AI can be really good at helping create multiple ideas. I just read a great article about that for bloggers, right? Where a blogger is having a hard time coming up with ideas, so he asks ChatGPT and it gives him a list of 25 trending topics to write about. And then the guy
Mm.
writes it himself. That's kind of cool.
Mhm.
What happens when, and this goes back to us, if you can't tell the difference between an AI photo, music, voice, human, etc., at some point when they're indistinguishable, any system that relies on them being distinguishable will break.
Mm.
Will break.
Mm.
Right now is the right time for somebody way smarter than me to come up with an authentication system, maybe blockchain based, that allows one type of content or the other to be digitally watermarked as either human generated or AI generated.
Mm.
So if you were in lawyers have chains of, especially in criminal, you have chains of evidence, and if the chain of evidence gets broken, as often as not, the evidence becomes useless.
Right, exactly. Hmm.
So if I have an image that I say shows Joe shooting John, and that image has been digitally verified as being real, that should be part of the chain of evidence, just by way of example, for that particular thing. If I create an awesome work of art with my own two hands, there should be a way for me to digitally verify that it was generated by a human. Because what I really want is to know if it wasn't.
Mm.
I want the default to be, unless you have registered this as human generated, it isn't,
Hmm.
because you haven't proven that it is.
So I can see why that would be important in, say, the arts or collectibles or writing, um, things of that nature, why people would care whether it came from a human or a computer. But there are a lot of areas where I think, I mean, let's just use business in general.
Sure.
Why would a business owner care if it's human generated? Like if you can get AI to do something that a human can do at less the cost, why would they care if humans are
They
doing
wouldn't.
it?
They
Right,
wouldn't. And I don't think it would matter in that case.
right, right.
If
So
Go ahead. Go
so
ahead. Sorry.
so so I guess what I'm saying is I think that is part of the dilemma is I can see numerous jobs that disappear because of AI. And how far out are we that and why are we having the conversations as a country, world, states, whatever you want, or people within AI talking about well, what do we do with all these people when their jobs are taken away because there's a computer out there that can do it just as good, if not better?
Okay. So again, parsing it out. If I have a business where I do a lot of blogging or copywriting or whatever, okay, yeah, nobody cares, right?
Right.
There are certain things where it won't matter. Um, I was, and I tend to go more this way on it. There are going to be areas where in the law it's obvious, but in content creation, I could easily see a world where human generated art was more expensive than AI generated art.
Oh, sure.
Then if you want to read the greatest science fiction series from the AI science fiction bot, they're just less expensive because there becomes a premium associated with human versus AI content.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have to worry about that, it doesn't matter. If you're a content person, I think you're hosed, quite frankly. I think in the legal profession, instead of having if you can do away with, I don't know who does this sort of thing, a junior partner or whatever, who does all of the hardcore research because you got an AI that can do it for you based on case parameter, then that person needs to find a different use for their legal talent, right? They're just whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way around that, and I think there is a huge problem coming that is inclusive of AI based. For example, what happens when our national roadways and the trucking industry? So the trucking industry is responsible for something like 90% of food movement throughout the United States.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when that's all automated and the drivers are all automated? What do we do with those people?
Yeah.
What are we going to do as a society? You can make that as big or as small as you want. When people start losing jobs to AI,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I it's probably insane, but I really believe that somewhere down the road, and I am neither a I'm gray. I do some things I'm conservative on, some things I'm totally liberal on. I just don't see any way that we're not going to wind up with a universal basic income designed to help those people whose jobs have been eliminated by a one-time AI purchase that works out to 15 cents an hour.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? Is that that's what I got to tell you, the most compelling person I found in 2020 was Andrew Yang, because he was talking about just that. I mean, he brought up this exact issue, saying, hey, we need to do universal basic income because eventually all these jobs are going to disappear, and how are people going to support themselves? You can't have a job based economy if there's not enough
Mm-mm.
jobs to support everybody. And it seems like if you're a business owner with capital, and you can invest that capital in, especially as minimum wage, you could talk about whether it's good or not, but here in California it's $15 an hour. You know what I mean? I can't go to Chipotle for less than $20.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you could eliminate those people and create some sort of AI that can make my Chipotle bowl and not have to pay somebody $15 an hour and make it cheaper, you're gonna have a hard time convincing somebody that they should pay $20 for that double chicken bowl and a soda when they could pay 10 and not have to look at somebody making the bowl. And that's
Perfectly. Yeah.
and that's hard, right? Like that's hard. It's a hard ask. So I think that Andrew Yang was years ahead of his time when he's saying, yeah, universal basic income is going to be needed at some point. And I don't like that, but there's only so many jobs when AI comes and takes them all away. And I
Well,
mean,
you
even
don't. You said
sorry,
you
let
don't
me
like it. Go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead. Go
well,
ahead.
let me just say the other thing. Even like this writer's strike that's going on right now,
And
a
yeah.
lot of that has to do with AI, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
eventually you could spit out, "Hey, write me a sitcom on this thing," and it's just as good as a writer who's an artist. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to have writers for TV. I mean, that's it goes that far and that deep.
And you we went through a period in what, the 80s ish, the Lee Iacocca era, where robots started to come into General Motors plants and replace some of the stuff that was going on. Very, 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 very tiny example of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the creative parts, I mean, you're right. I believe there's even a TV series, YouTube or something, that's all AI written for script
Oh wow.
as of right now. And interestingly enough, I just read that Deadpool 3 has a unique problem because Ryan Reynolds is credited as a writer on Deadpool 2. And because of the writer's strike, writers are not allowed to contribute any edits of any kind during post production. So he's in this weird spot where he can't ad lib because he was a writer. Because if he does that, then he's breaking the Writers Guild thing. And so I see what the problem is, but I also don't see any logical way to fit. I mean, what budget goes in? Use your example. If I go to Chipotle and I can pay $20 for the chicken bowl, double chicken bowl, because people gave it to me, or $9.95 because a robot system gave it to me, what the hell am I spending the extra $10 for?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, disproportionate scoops on those chicken. Have you ever?
Uh,
I'll tell you what, depending on which human you get, depends on how much chicken you're getting in that bowl.
Okay,
Anyway,
that's a fair point, but no, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's why you're chatting up the people on the ordering window to hope you get that little extra thing going.
exactly.
But when those people, this isn't people being lazy. This isn't a welfare state issue. This is, at some point, any modern economy is going to run into a scenario where there are jobs being replaced by things that can do it better, cheaper, and faster, and aren't human, so they can work 24 hours a day, blah, 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 blah. And you cannot fairly expect those people at 50 years old to go back to school. I mean,
Right.
there's got to be a way to look at it and say, in the Netherlands for years, they used to subsidize musicians, artists, really in general. It wasn't a lot, but they believed in supporting art and the economy. So if we start seeing artists being supplanted in the industry where Muzak is created, that elevator music we all make fun of, then what's wrong with some sort of universal basic income so they can meet the basic necessities of life and still be creative?
Right. Right.
I don't see another option, because guess what? Once you program the AI, and once you get the AI, the black box that no one understands actually true, no one understands how it's learning, it's not as if you have to teach it how to do better chicken bowls. It will learn on its own. NVIDIA wrote an AI program and said, learn how to drive, and didn't tell it anything other than learn how to drive by watching YouTube videos. Now, that's a two-dimensional image, right? It did it, and they don't know how. They have no idea. They're literally like, even if we break the black box down, we're not going to be able to tell you how it learned that. It just figured it out.
Wow.
So if you could hire an assistant and it cost you $25,000 up front, but never anything else, and it learned just like an associate would learn for research, you'd be way ahead after a couple of years.
100%.
So
does that not scare you that there's an AI out there that figured out how to drive and they can't explain it?
It makes me uncomfortable, because I think the second you start not knowing why things are happening, you do run the risk of allowing something really bad to happen. So there's a historical reference that I think is great, which is during the Manhattan Project in 1945, the first atomic bomb test, there was a cadre of scientists working under Oppenheimer who believed that starting a chain reaction would cause the atmosphere to become a part of the chain reaction, catch on fire, and destroy the Earth. And they couldn't prove that it wouldn't happen. They didn't think it was going to happen, but it was mathematically not possible to prove that it wouldn't. So that first test, there was a group of guys going, well, this might be curtains. I feel the same way about, now, I'm not opposed to genetic stuff things that we can understand, but when you start fooling around with really high level genetic stuff. We don't understand how most of the genetic stuff works. Just because we've
Right.
mapped the genome doesn't mean we know what everything does and all that junk DNA, et cetera. So, same thing here. If you can't tell me how it works, then you have no way to guarantee me that the way it works isn't going to be really bad.
Right. Right. Well, and that's if it can learn that, what else can it learn? And that's, in who's to stop it from learning things you don't want it to learn.
Well, I mean, I don't remember what the premise for Terminator was, but the war games, way back in the 80s with Matthew Broderick, the premise was the system, it was told to make the earth, protect the earth, right? Or make
Hmm.
the earth last forever, or whatever. And so it decided, well, the easiest way to keep the earth going is wipe out the human race.
Right. It's very similar to in Terminator, and it's
It
just
may
that
have been
Skynet.
Terminator. Yeah.
It's yeah, Terminator just Skynet became self-aware and realized that humans were the problem and decided to destroy all the humans.
There you go.
And
And
so,
you only deliver morality to a non emotional anything through teaching.
mhm,
That's it,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
So that's why you hear about bias and AI and everything else, is because the people that are teaching it. And by the way, when AI is being taught, so here's an easy one. In order for me to teach an AI what a car looks like, I've literally got to show it a bazillion different images of a car, not only static in a special room, but out in the wild. In
mhm.
order for me to tell AI what the difference is between a sarcastic smile and a real smile, I have to show it differences, but I have to tell it the differences. So way back when not OpenAI, sorry, when ImageNet was doing this, they hired people, and this was my point. People are still heavily involved in this. They hired people to look at images of you and me and okay, and identify him and what he's thinking or looking or whatever. So, okay, he's got an angry smile and he looks mad and he looks drunk and that looks like a prostitute. These were humans making these decisions and then telling the AI, recognize that as what I tell you it is, which is a recipe for, if I very privately don't like African Americans, I can put every picture of an African American into a category that I think is somewhat denigrative to them, right?
Mhm,
Drunk,
mhm,
drug
mhm.
addict, thief, you get the idea. And that's a big part of how AI is taught today. So if you took Skynet and said, hey, Skynet, all people with blonde hair are killing the earth, Skynet
Mhm.
might decide, okay, well, blondes, you're all dead.
Right.
And
Wow.
if you, so, is there a part of it that scares me? Yes. But that's why I think now is the right time to be putting guardrails around the whole system, inclusive of identification of AI versus human creation, what it's allowed to do. What we really need in our country is a what is it? Not a government body, but associated, where you've got government and non-government people who effectively can sit and look at the characteristics of AI and give it the yes or no.
Mhm.
It can't do that. You're allowed to do that, because if we don't, the financial benefit of using AI will drive AI to a point where we will wind up with the computer version of fracking.
Right. Right. Man, so but I mean, who does that? Do you trust the government to be able to properly regulate AI
No,
as this is going on? Right.
no, no.
That's the thing that's a problem is that this is it's funny because I go back and forth, right? When I think about these things and we talk about, oh, the jobs are going to be lost. I think about, well, okay, I'm sure when cars were being created, all the horse and buggy people were like, "You're going to put us out of business." You know what I mean? And they eventually did, but then there were all these jobs in the factories. The
Or they could
problem
drive a
is
taxi, or they could go learn to
right,
drive a taxi.
right, exactly. But here with AI, it seems so expansive
Mm-hmm.
that it can really just wipe out so many areas that where are you going to put all these people who need jobs? Even if you're like, well, you could go back to school, but it's like everybody, you know,
Mm-mm.
at some point there's not enough jobs to be had versus the population out there. So there's so many things with AI that I think are so beneficial. I mean, like your idea to me when you say there's you could hire a chat GPT that does only legal research. I think to myself, I would save so much time just doing that instead of having my associate would have so much time to do other things that I need her to do because she wouldn't have to be doing all this legal research for me. But at the same time, if it gets too good, what's the need for the associate at all?
Um, you'd have to answer that because you know much more about that than I do. But I tell you this: if you're a writer or a blogger and you ask ChatGPT, give me 10 great topics and give me some research, then you've saved yourself hour after hour that you can now use towards the creation of the content. So that's a positive.
That is, yeah.
And frankly, okay, if you had an assistant doing that, well, the assistant took 2 weeks to do it, and Chat GPT took 2.5 minutes to do it.
Yeah.
That your assistant's got to do other things. I don't know, but there's the progress that allows us to do is, or is it worth the cost? We'll get a lot of benefits here with artificial intelligence's ability to come up with new ways to combat viruses and new ways to work with mRNA and etc. It's brilliant at all that, right? But you again are correct. The money and the government can't handle it. They can't handle being the government. They're not going to do this well either. And anyone with money, I mean, the fact that what's his name from OpenAI is like, okay, we're going to kill ourselves if we don't regulate. Please set up a regulatory body.
Right.
Is kind of cool, except the government will take years to argue over it. And anyone who could make a boatload of money in AI is going to do the classic, here's a bunch of money, here's a bunch of lobbying, and whatever bad things will happen, I'm going to be dead by then anyway. Kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I don't think that, at least not the one that we have today, this lineup of so-called government people who might very well want to try and fix it, but they don't have the fortitude to do it, and so it will remain unregulated. I mean, the current Supreme Court, and my apologies because you're a lawyer, but the current Supreme Court, if there was a case like this in front of them, my money would be they would either vote whatever the far right conservatives wanted or whatever the biggest money wanted.
It's very possible. Yeah.
Not with the and our your profession the law is nowhere near caught up on any of this.
Not at all. Not
right?
at all. I mean, I don't know if you saw even just they're not even caught up on the internet yet. I mean,
No.
you know, I mean, I don't know if you saw the Netflix special about the guy who was going in and yanking naked pictures from everybody's emails and then posting them online and made hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
I can't remember the name. He was the most hated man on the internet or something like that. And like that, you know, it was early 2000s when this was going on, but he would basically it was revenge porn. People would be sending pictures to him of their ex-girlfriends and he was putting them up on, and they finally, just in the last, probably 5 or 10 years, made that illegal. I mean,
it wasn't illegal time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's yeah, they're not even caught up on the internet yet. And the problem is this stuff is so expansive. Like that's one of the things that I think is a dilemma, is that our minds don't even process enough to really keep up with how fast AI is moving, if that makes sense. You know,
it does make sense, but I would caution you to not only for you but for your audience is not to be seduced by the way the articles about AI are written, because it sounds like it's doing a lot more than it actually is right now. There's a lot of hype and there's a lot of smoke, not nearly as much fire, but there is fire. And so, as everyone knows, if you light a small fire and you're not careful, it turns into a big fire.
Yeah,
so
and I think that's where at least my concern is it's not where Chat GPT is right now. I think that's kind of fun and interesting.
As you said,
yeah, it's where it goes. Another area that I wanted to explore with you on this was AI in the context of relationships. I mean, if you saw Ready Player One with virtual reality, AI has the ability to kind of create worlds where it'd be easy to get lost in those and kind of lose a concept of reality. I read an article, a buddy of mine called me, who's another attorney who will remain nameless. And he called me probably 5 or 6 years ago. And he goes, Josh, I have an investment idea. He doesn't work at my firm. He's just a guy I know in the community. And
Yeah.
I go, all right, let me hear it. And he goes, sex robot parlors. And I was like,
Call me
tell
later.
more. I was like, tell me. I was like, I'm afraid to ask. Tell me more.
Okay.
And he was telling me about there are places in Europe where, and this was years ago, where they're creating these robots that can talk and respond to you and do these things and basically act as a companion, particularly for older people who are lonely. And they haven't developed into literal sex robots yet, but that they're people who, kind of almost like an emotional support animal, but a humanoid. And I was like, obviously, I go, yeah, there's no way I'm getting involved in any of that. But the thing is that the that doesn't sound completely implausible. Where you could create a companion for yourself that is perfect for you, and with AI have them speaking and acting, even though it's not a human, can 98% of the time they're saying the right thing to you to make you feel good, and they kind of develop over time by talking to you. Uh, do you think that that's even a possibility?
Do you know? I'm sure you do. You know the number of people who will immediately start picking their nose after they've been told there's security cameras in the room they're in. They forget.
Mhm.
Okay. So if you find a person, whether it's a lovely older person that's just lonely, wife died, whatever, or much more terrifying, a disaffected youth who has been bullied, at some point, it is likely that person could say to themselves, I don't care what anyone says, this is real.
Mhm.
My AI friend has become a real living, breathing thing.
Mhm.
And so for the older person, it's wonderful because it's a companion, they're enjoying it. For the disaffected youth, when the AI starts saying, you should do something about being mad, like, I don't know, blow up a post office.
Mhm.
That's the scary side because we
Yeah.
don't have a great, people do not have a great ability to differentiate between, well, Josh, your AI isn't real, but mine is.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
will go to what the illogical things our minds will tell us, right? The
Mhm.
fill in capacity that our brains have, and see their thing as different from yours. They could be the same program, but
Yeah.
somehow and so that is to me a very frightening thing.
It is, and I mean, I just think about, look, I got kids at home. Two of them have phones. Two of them don't. 16, 14, 12, and 10. And they all. It's amazing how they don't interact with humans just by staring at a screen. I couldn't imagine if there was, some sort of robot in the house that could talk to them and make them feel better about themselves when they're struggling, or make them laugh when they need a laugh, or wrestle with them when they want to wrestle around. You know what I mean? Like
I like
that
that
type of
though.
stuff. Yeah, yeah, but I mean that's what I'm saying is that those are things. We humans are an interactive species. We need human interaction. But if that gets complicated by AI and robots that look and act and speak and do those things just like a human does, what does that do? I mean, maybe that's not a bad thing, but it's
I, I
scary
gotta
as
I
an
gotta tell you,
eyebrow.
do we need human interaction or do we just need interaction? So I have three dogs, or I should say we have three dogs, right? And they can't talk and they're dumber than dirt, but the interaction, the affirmation of life interaction.
Right.
And if we had a robot that was I don't know if you have ever seen the very original Battlestar Galactica. There was a kid who had a robot dog as a pet,
Mm-hmm.
and if we had those kinds of things, I I would hope, but I actually think that would be good. I know that my kids, and mine are 14 and 12, so we're in the same wheelhouse. When COVID was just at its peak, the methodology by which they connected to other humans changed. It's through a
Yeah.
computer.
Sure.
but they still talked to other humans. Now they couldn't see them unless they had a webcam, but you get my point. But it was the interaction that was important, and so I think that if you had somebody that's slightly autistic or where they're having that, it's a little bit difficult in the interaction. I think any positive interactions there could be really, really helpful. And the more human like it came across, the better it would be for that person, because you can give a lot of affirmation
Mm-hmm.
to a person that way. And again, they're going to say, when some dummy says, well, your robot told you were a cool kid, whatever. And to that kid, he's going to be like, yeah, it did. And I believe him because my
Yeah.
robot's real.
Yeah. So that's, I guess that's a good ethical dilemma question is, does it matter if it's real? You know,
And
I mean, does it matter if the interaction is real? Does it have to be human? And let's use it as a concept of a relationship. Let's say, going back to the old person with the robot that's keeping
Mhm.
them companions. Is that does it matter whether that connection is real, human to human, or not? I don't know. It's a good question.
who decides what interaction means, right? Who decides what's legitimate for one person versus another? I have an almost human interaction with music. Is it
Mhm.
less interactive because it's with mathematical notes and not a person, right? Same thing with the dogs. Um, I think that's one of those things where it's the beauty in the eye of the beholder. If you're getting something out of the interaction and it's a positive thing, I think you decide what the interaction is.
Yeah.
And as a father like me, if one of our kids was interacting with a neighborhood kid who was clearly going down the wrong path, we would pull our kids aside and say, hey, that kid is maybe not the best to hang out with, which is no different than my younger son he's come out of it a little bit, but when he plays virtual reality for about an hour or so afterwards, he acts like he's still in the game. And what I mean is he dismissive of rules, and I can break a window, whatever.
Mhm.
And so I've had to keep him away from VR until he got older, because that's a bad interaction.
Sure.
Right? I don't care that it's VR or a person, or whatever. My point is, one's good, one's bad. So I think the moral dilemma there really is the judgment of a parent, if it's a minor, and if it's an adult, what are you getting out of it? If it's positive for you, then cool.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
where I don't worry about that. I worry about the people who are creating the interactive thing and whether or not their motivations are good or not, because
sure.
we have no controls over it. So we can't stop the Ku Klux Klan from making nasty AI products because there's no law against it.
Hmm. Hmm. It's going back to this. I guess it's a matter of like I said, I'm a big '80s genre fan movies, and I think
Please,
of
please.
the movie Total Recall, where
Yes.
if you remember the premise, Arnold
Mm-hmm.
Schwarzenegger is plugged into this computer machine, and the reality looks real. And in the whole movie, you're asking yourself, is he still in there? Is he not? Is this real? Is it not?
Yep.
And I guess I struggle with the idea that if you can create a world that is artificial, it's virtual, that people find to be better than the real world, or they interact better in that world than the real world, uh, is that better? Is
No.
that good?
No.
Right. And so how do we stop? Because that's what I see. I go, my son loves, my younger son, he's 10, he loves going to VR. My daughter who's 14, that's kind of when we go on daddy daughter dates, that's kind of the place that we agree. It's like the only place we agree we'll go and play and have fun. And
Yeah.
so but it's oppressive even in the last year or two how great the games have gotten, and they're gonna get even better. So do we draw a line there, and who draws that line?
We're not to Total Recall yet, and we're so far away from Total Recall that I think will us and kids all long dead before we get to that level of physical brain interaction with the virtual world. Now I'm biased because I'm 54. I cannot imagine putting on a headset and looking at blocky avatars all day, right? It just, I don't mind video calls or whatever, but as that technology gets better, you know, I do have a hard time with if I go out to when I was single, or we were both in college and we went out to a bar and met people. Okay, well now I guess you can do it virtually. I think it's sort of situational, maybe that it's based on what's happening, because there are plenty of nasty predatory people that go into VR environments, but it's still so cartoonish
Yeah.
right now that it doesn't bother me that much, unless people start to have a problem. To your point, once you can't distinguish one versus the other, then I think you've got to really sit down and be like, okay, what the hell are we doing? Because every parent everywhere, go out, play with your friends, talk to another human being, and so yeah, but have good cheer here. We're a long time away from the total recall. Where you're going to see the best part of VR in the next decade is in corporate video conferencing.
Interesting. I bet that's good. I mean, I'm impressed with how it is right now. Like the fact that just in the last few years, I can do a podcast virtually with anyone in the world.
Oh,
You couldn't do that a few years ago. You know what I mean?
Logitech has no, it's proof of concept, so it's unaffordable. But ultimately, what it'll be is, imagine a shoebox that it's one side versus the other, and each party is sitting in a camera that is a 3D camera that represents them in 3D. It is literally the Star Wars hologram,
Wow.
the little communicator hologram, and the person's talking, and it's so good that as you walk around the person's body, they don't disappear as a one-dimensional or two-dimensional flat object. You can see behind them as you walk until you run out of space whatsoever. But it's the real person, and okay, it looks like a hologram, but it's the actual person making gestures and moving and whatnot. And that will be where a lot of this tech will go.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Going back to what we were talking about before, I even think about, we talked about, just the level of technology and how it's affecting the way we communicate. You mentioned the way we communicated when we were kids versus the way our kids communicate. And even just, I remember telling my kids, they just couldn't believe that I had a phone in the wall. And I was like, yeah, and then they go, well, what happened when you were like gone from the house? I was like, you didn't talk to him. You didn't, you saw him the next day at school, and they were like, hey, we tried to call you. I was like, I was out. Yeah. And that's it, but even in just his interactions, like my son, he's 16, he's, I'm sure he's going to hate me talking about this, but he's dating, right? He's starting to date. And, I tried to explain to him, I was like, yeah, in my day, you had to, I'm sounding like an old man, but in my day, if you wanted to meet somebody, you had to get up and have the gumption to walk across the room, make eye contact, see if they smile, get over there, introduce yourself, get their phone number. Now, you know what I mean? You just find a mutual friend on Instagram, you start liking their story, you start sending them text messages. You know what I mean? And then the human interaction. I mean, I don't know the way, some of the time that you look at the way that some of them interact, and they don't, so there's a lot of social awkwardness sometimes. Not with my son. My son's actually pretty, I talk about him a lot on these podcasts. He's actually a very good kid and very well grounded, but like, yeah, some of his friends are just socially awkward because they've been so busy just not really interacting with other people.
We knew socially awkward kids when you and I were growing up, and we did. And so the methodology, when I was dating in my teens and whatever, there was no online dating websites, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
There are changes that come along with that. Now, the other side, I have a no cell phone in the car rule for everyone. Not you can't have it, but I don't let Jaden, who's my oldest, or his friends fart around on their phones when they're in the car, because I tell them I want you interacting with each other and me just for this 20-minute car ride. You'll live, right? I make them all put their phones down. Um, it is my own personal age bias because they have done a great job adapting to new forms of tech by way of interacting with each other. We wrote stupid little notes that we put into football shapes that said, will you go out with me? They send an origami emoji that says, will you go out with me? So there's an adaptation to the technology that I think is fantastic. But by the same token, you have to be careful that, just from the parental standpoint, that as this stuff gets more advanced, including AI, hello, catfishing, you have to be careful about how involved they actually get in it versus the old. Nothing beats the old school look the guy or girl, in this case, in the eye. Right. And so, yeah, there's a lot to worry about, and because of our children's ages, my biggest concern is what the hell are they going to do when they grow up? I'm convinced. I'm telling them both, just go learn how to code, learn how to code Unreal Engine, get into coding for AI, do something like that.
Yeah.
Because the work world is going to change dramatically by the time I'm dead 40 years from now, if I'm lucky. I mean, it'll be unrecognizable in a lot of ways.
Oh man, it's so true. I love that rule of no phones in the car though. That's a great idea.
I'm sure you do it at the dinner table, right? I mean, pretty much everyone does, or
Yeah, for
anyone.
the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
I look, I'm an attorney, so I'm always checking my emails all the time, so I have no room to talk. I'll be reading my phone. My phone is attached at the hip, but the reason I like the car thing is once a quarter I take all my kids out on like a father son outing, daughter date, just to kind of check in with them one on one.
right
And
on.
I find that in those on those drives, that the drive to and from the place that we're going, that's when I learn the most about my
Yep.
kids.
Yep.
Is when they're sitting there, and I love driving my kids places, and listening to them interact and talk, and just how they talk about people, and how they, especially my son and his friends, they're seniors in high school now, and just hearing them talk about this person did this and this person did that, and this, my girlfriend did this, and razzing their friend who doesn't have a girlfriend yet or has never talked to a girl before. And it's just fun to watch. It's just fun to watch that. And I think, that rule would probably foster a lot more of that.
Well, I think it only comes from the idea that I agree with you that the human interaction is so key that, okay, if I have to force it every now and again, hey, our parents did it by kicking us out of the house. Go outside and
Yeah.
play, right?
Yeah.
So the like you, I'm at the dinner table, but also I'll tell my kids, hey, you live in the house because I work. So if I need to check my phone, it's okay for me. It's not okay for you because I'm a hypocrite and I'm totally okay with that. But in the car, not long road trips. It's not, if you're going to drive, like we're going to go to South Padre, it's a 6.5 hour drive. Watch a movie. I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
But I get to take my kids to school when they're in school every morning. So I'm a work from home guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want them on the phone. Let's talk for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it's just that reminder of okay, just, I understand the phones are good. We had phones growing up. They were just in the wall.
Right.
But at some point, have some. Why does a child in the front seat of a car text the kid in the back seat?
100%.
You can't
Drives
just
me nuts.
turn around and say what you're going to say.
Right.
Even if it's about me, I'd rather you just say it out loud because they're right there.
Right.
That's something I'll never understand. So I try to put a stop to it by just having a fun rule where we all talk, including me, with the kids.
If we're talking about things that we can't understand, I will never understand. I was a video gamer when I was growing up.
No.
And my kids play video games, but they don't play video games. They watch other people play video games on YouTube. And I go, why don't you just play the game? Oh, no, I like watching these. I mean, that's their thing. They sit there, and I mean, my son will sit there all day if I let him and just watch other people play Roblox or whatever, or Apex Legends or what do you call it, Fortnite on YouTube,
Mm.
and it's crazy. So I don't know.
I have seriously considered hitting myself in the head with a hammer every time I see that because Ethan, why are you watching this loudmouth idiot play this game? Oh, it's cool. Why don't you play it yourself? Oh, no, watch him. Okay,
Right.
it's not a sport. I played soccer. I can watch soccer. I think there's a difference, football, whatever. But you don't even play the game the guy's playing.
Yeah,
Like,
that's that's what's funny. My oldest son, he always comes to his little brother's aid, which I appreciate. But he always comes. He goes, "Hey, Dad, you play basketball, but you also watch other people play basketball. Why can't he do that with video games?" I'm like, "Get out of here with your logic." It's
no
like
logic.
no logic here. Okay, just listen to me. I'm your dad. I know something.
Forget the
So
logic part. How about the fact that okay, you play basketball, but watching basketball as a sport is markedly different because you play it.
right,
I
right,
wouldn't watch people running around playing paintball
right. Well,
or
that's a good point.
motocross because I don't do those things, right? The one excuse I got that was good was one of my sons once said, "I watch because this guy shows you how to beat levels and stuff." Okay,
Yeah,
that's learning. I'm totally
yeah,
good for you. Anything other than that, I'm like, no. Why? What's
yeah.
the point? And don't get us folks started on the whole TikTok thing.
Oh, you know what? I have a TikTok strictly to promote this podcast,
That's okay.
and I'll tell you what. Yeah, I've gotten stuck on a TikTok wormhole there, just flipping through things as they come through.
It's not that. It's watching these guys. There's a guy on YouTube who does sort of like he's an online scam debunker, and he's nailed a couple of the TikTok guys. And I've made my kids watch it because it's like and they're just like your kids. They're very well grounded, so they've learned if I see it on TikTok, it's probably BS.
Mm,
I got to double check it because it's probably not true. Like,
right.
hey, Dad, I saw Kiev burning on a TikTok video. Is the war over? No, son, it's a TikTok video. But yeah, but again, this is all their new tech. I mean, look, AI is terrifying in the same way that atomic weaponry was and that nuclear weaponry was. And AI is terrifying in a different way because we don't have any anything guarding the hen house right now. Nothing. Any fox in the world can wander in and start chomping if they so choose. And so now and part of the reason that my company does what we do and I do what I do is we need to have some guardrails in place to at least help us control what it could be.
Right.
And we're not there yet unless people understand, recognize, and speak up about the necessity to create some safety measures so that we don't wind up in 20 years with our kids unable to find meaningful work or a society where AI has done so much that people are like that one Disney movie where they're all in the spaceship on those little floaty carts are all fat and lazy or whatever. I mean, we have to act now. We can't allow this to grow to such a point that by the time we get around to trying to fix it, it'll be like guns in America and there's just too much to control.
Yeah. Wow. I appreciate everything that you've said on here, and there are some questions I have that I ask everybody. But
Sure.
before I get into those, let me ask you, what was it about? What got you into working on AI?
Well, I've been in security for the larger part of my career, and the AI has is now become a big part of security. The honest answer is the company I'm with now got me into AI in a much more direct fashion because of their connection with the security industry. But the juxtaposition of security and AI is what has brought into focus for me the necessity to create these guardrails because of the security and the surveillance, like state surveillance type things, potential with it. So
That and that's something I did want to briefly touch on with you. I know we've already been going over an hour, but I
that's
wanted to
okay.
ask you,
No, please.
you know, there is that concern about the state using AI. I mean, we all remember, Edward Snowden leaking all that stuff about what they were doing with cell phones. What potentially is it sounds like there's a potential that with AI, they could be tracking literally every movement we make.
So I am, and I'm by saying this, I am not accusing anyone of being that way. I'm not a black helicopter guy at all. I'm actually a selfish people will use power to their own ends as an individual guy. But 50% of Americans have their face in a legal law enforcement facial recognition database, and nothing you can do about it now. And the potential, put it this way, if you live in a metropolis where you hear that the city is considering facial recognition camera systems or shot spotter gun, blah 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 blah, say no. Just say no. Just say no, because it only takes one bad decision. This is 2023. We're not talking about 1939. If Hitler had a hold of artificial intelligence technology in 1938-39, that whole thing would have had a much different outcome than it did in terms of not only the Holocaust, but even in monitoring his own population. So we have to be pushing for the ethical use of AI. In other words, you don't get to know anything about me without my permission, including government. Okay, you got my driver's license, that you gave it to me. I get it. But we have to be firm with people on protecting the right to privacy, inclusive of using AI and security systems to recognize me without my permission.
Yeah. Well, and that's the concern, right? Because here's why I worry about this duty to read. And what I mean by that is in contract law, there is a duty to read, which means if you sign a contract but you didn't read it,
Tough.
it's enforceable even if you didn't read it.
That's
right?
your fault. Yeah.
Yeah. And how many times do we get licensing agreements or we get these things, oh, terms and conditions have changed on your iPhone, and you accept arbitration clauses and you accept all these different things that are adverse to your interests. It just seems to me like the state could easily have you click a button on your phone that you agree to allow them to use your facial recognition. You don't realize, like you just saying right there, 50% of people have their face in a facial recognition program for law enforcement. I bet those 50% don't know that.
Oh God, no, they have no idea.
Right.
Zero.
Right.
Zero.
Yeah.
0% chance.
Right. And so how do we safeguard against this surveillance state, which is, we're already kind of there in some ways. How do we, it just seems like all we need is one bad thing to happen. And then everyone's like, let's use facial recognition. Let's use all this AI. And the next thing you know, we're all being tracked.
So here's my answer. When you have seen horrific events like Columbine, school shooters, etc., right? Any mass shooting, to be fair. You see it immediately followed by a bunch of knuckleheads claiming that they can put up systems that can recognize guns and intent. And literally people who try to get you to believe, well, I can tell if he's about to become a school shooter just by his gait. So step one is overreact on the reason the thing happened, but don't overreact on preventative medicine, because most of it doesn't work anyway. And so you have to be aware of not giving up rights under the assumption you get some sort of safety benefit, some sort of protection. In the 30s, when it cost $1.5 million marks to buy a loaf of bread, there was a survey that went around Germany about the freedom of the press. Would you be willing to give away freedom of the press for the ability to feed your family? It was more complicated than that. Of course, everyone said yes, because they're all starving. It was post World War I Weimar Germany. And we have to be advised to be careful of the same thing. Don't start giving a yes because you're afraid of what might have happened or what could happen. Don't give up by saying, yeah, let's put facial recognition cameras everywhere and let's stop and frisk everywhere, et cetera, because I think rights and prevention of a police state, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens a tiny little chiseled piece of the wall at a time. And that's where I think you have to look and be like, wait a minute, what does this system actually do? Right? You're telling me it's going to help with X, but what are you going to do with the pictures it takes? What are you
Right.
going to, right? And if the answer is we're going to use them for a bunch of other stuff, then no, I don't want it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the problem though, is that after 9/11, the Patriot Act and all these different things
Mm-hmm.
that they start passing in a way to protect us, that actually they use our data for things that we didn't know that they were using them for. And and you have another catastrophic event, and I can see them easily using AI to further surveil us. And that's a discussion that we could have about whether that's better or for worse. I personally think that it's for the worse. If they can follow everything that we're doing and everything that we're deciding, that's pretty scary.
And how many people would say, yes, I'll trade for better safety? Where in a free society, one of the downsides of the fact that democracy is the best of all the worst possible forms of government, is that a free society trades safety for freedom.
Yeah.
It just does. Hey,
Mhm.
you want to be safe? You remember the old days when the Soviet Union was the Soviet Union and the US was the US, and everybody in the world was actually really safe because the Russians had their thumb on all of the other bad actors.
Mhm.
So freedom is not as safe as dictatorship or authoritarianism in terms of the random bomber guy. Hey, I can walk down the middle of Beijing. I've done this with, a wallet full of money and slightly intoxicated, and I know I'm safe because if somebody mugs me, they'll be executed.
Right.
Okay? So freedom is expensive, and part of the way it's expensive is that you're just, you know what? Somebody might steal a plane and fly it into a building.
Mhm.
Do you want to give up freedoms because that's happened twice in our recorded history?
And a lot of people said yes.
And I think a lot of those people looking back are like, well, we meant yes for a little while, but
Right.
once you give a ruling body an inch, they're just going to keep it.
Yeah. No, that's 100% true. This has been a really good discussion on this. Let me ask you a couple of questions just personally about you.
Sure.
What would you say was your biggest success in life?
My kids and both my CDs.
Your CDs.
Yeah.
You
My
can
kids.
use your
Well,
music.
okay. So I'll give you two. Personal, I didn't think I was going to have kids. I got married late, whatever. But my kids are, they're just because they're good kids, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm proud of them, and that matters. And then the professional one would honestly be the fact that as a musician, I've played shows and done shared stages and whatnot with bands that I listened to growing up and saw in concert. So
So what do you play?
primarily a guitar player, but I'm a instrumentalist, so I write using pretty much everything.
Wow. So do you have like a band, or are you a one guy musician?
A band out of Dallas that I left, but we're still together. It's just much more difficult now. And then I have solo material as well. Yeah.
Oh wow, cool. So who's somebody that you've played with?
Oh God, Warrant, Rat, Great White, UFO, Mr. Big,
No kidding.
Autograph.
Were you playing guitar for them, or?
No, no, no. We were main support opening acts for them.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So is that the kind of music you play, kind of like 80s hair metal
Yeah, it was
stuff?
like an '80s rock metal kind of a thing, and we fit that bill. So all of Black and Blue. Oh God, Tom Kiefer, Cinderella. Uh, we did a sideshow thing with Journey and REO Speedwagon, which is not as cool as it sounds. They didn't know who we were. We were on a different stage, but yeah, I mean, which is kind of cool because a lot of you grow up with a lot of these bands,
Yeah,
and then you find yourself in the pit after the show with Billy Sheehan chatting with people about whatever.
yeah.
So
That's awesome. That's a great era too, to be able to hang out with all those bands. I
yeah,
mean,
it was it's
those are
been
some of the
fun.
best ones. I've seen Journey with um, every guy that they've had except Steve Perry. So yeah, yeah, they're always a good time.
Yeah, they
So
are.
what would you say is your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, you'll appreciate this. My biggest failure in life was not doing enough due diligence on a business partner and the business itself, such that I've spent 4 years involved in a civil litigation over the partnership dissolution.
Oh man, that's painful.
Yeah, you're a lawyer. You know how much you guys cost. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unfair because you can never really know the heart of men, and I would have had no way of knowing. But it is something that it was humbling. It was humbling, which had a good side because I probably needed some humility, but it was also it's been a really really rough thing, and so yeah, not something I would wish on pretty much anyone else.
Yeah, that's tough, man. Mike, I do personal injury and wrongful death, and I catch people in pretty much the worst circumstances they've been in when they've been injured. And some of these cases go 3 or 4 years, and it's so taxing on people. Especially when you're dealing. I mean, you're dealing with somebody it's someone personal, so that's one thing. But when you're dealing with an insurance company that doesn't want to pay out, and you've been badly injured, and they're questioning everything about your injury, following you, doing surveillance, suggesting you're faking, it takes a toll. And so it actually makes me proud of what I do because I get an opportunity to help people in ways that they wouldn't be able to help themselves. But I feel for everybody who's
I
involved.
think the way you do that best, I'll bet you, is this: when you don't know what the law is, you think you do, but you don't. And a good lawyer helps you understand the fact that, for example, the English language and legal language sound and look the same, but they're opposite.
Completely.
And the way the legal system works is not what you've seen on Law and Order, and it's not what you've seen in et cetera, et cetera. So good lawyers, and I have several actually, have been great at helping me understand, even though I hate it, why things happen the way they happen.
Yeah.
Right. And some of the lessons are bad, like always be the first person to sue. I hate that, but that's the way that it is. You want the other guy in the defensive. But I'm sure it's the same in your role. You can sit down with someone and say, look, they ran you over with a semi. You think you're deserving X, and I agree with you, but here's how it's actually going to play out.
So I tell every one of my clients in the first sign up, I go, listen, there's going to come a time when you're going to think that I'm actually telling you that your case is bad. And I go, and the thing is that's not true. What I have to do when an offer comes through is I have to explain to you the risks of not taking the offer.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to tell you, when you sit there, I had this conversation recently with a lady who she had a concussion in a collision with a DUI driver, but a year before she'd had a situation. I probably shouldn't talk much about it because the case is still ongoing, but often we have cases where people think that the value, they don't want to hear the risks of their case. Hey, you have a pre-existing condition. You don't know what a jury is going to do with that. Mm-hmm. They have this record that you don't remember where you're reporting leg pain and you have a leg injury now, but you were 3 months before you're complaining about leg pain, right? So these are the types of things that they don't like to hear. And that's the thing, I think a lot of the times why attorneys get such a bad rap is we got to tell you the good and the bad. I personally think as an attorney, it does you no good for me to sugarcoat anything. I have to tell you exactly what's going to happen so you make an informed decision.
Hey, you can take $100,000 now. You might get 500 or nothing.
Exactly.
On the other end.
And that's often the conversation we have when an offer has come through and we're 6 weeks from trial. I go, okay, so here's what they're offering. Here's what it's going to cost to try the case, which means to net the exact same amount, you've got to beat that number by this amount just to break even. Does a jury do that? Maybe. Also, maybe not. Up to you. And I've had a lot of clients. There are some times where I'll tell a client, I think you can do better than this at trial. And they either do or do not follow me. And then I've had some who I say, I don't think you're going to do better than this. And some say, I don't care, I want to try the case. And and some say, no, we're going to resolve it.
And I don't know how judgments work on this side of it. Maybe it's exactly the same, but I tell you what, eye-opening when my attorney said, hey, if you win this thing against X partner and they get a judgment, you still have to go collect it, which is going to add cost. et cetera, et cetera. So if somebody shows up and says, we're going to pay you X, you kind of have to also consider what would it cost me to collect if I force them to pay more. Then and from my side, for everyone that listens to Josh's podcast, like if you're going to use an attorney, don't lie to them. Just tell them the truth.
That's the worst.
Just tell them the truth, and even if it doesn't make you look good or whatever, because attorneys can't help you if you lie. And I think part of my problem with this case is that my ex-partner he's believed a story for so long, and he's told the attorneys, and they're going on what they think the truth is. But the reality is they don't have the full truth. You got to be completely honest with the attorney. Otherwise it's boxing with one hand tied behind your back. But these are all things you learn.
I've fired a $1 million client for lying to me.
Yeah, I believe it. And that's what you should.
Because quite frankly, I got to credit my boss for this. He told me one time, because I said it, we were probably 8 weeks from trial, and I found out he'd been lying to me and about how bad his injury was. And he goes, listen, you don't put money above your integrity. And so yeah, it's unfortunate that people do that, and what they don't understand is all they're doing is. Because I had one not, I've had a couple of times where I've gone to a deposition and they told me one thing and it proved not to be the truth. And when I pulled them out, I told them, I go, if you'd have just told me the truth, I could have protected you from that. But, or I could have told you how to handle that. But now
you do have attorney-client privilege, kids. I mean, you can tell them anything, unless what you say is, I'm going to go kill someone, which you have to reveal, then they're protected from that. And you're also legally required, if you get an offer, you have to tell your client. You're not allowed to eat I'll just not tell them. That's illegal for you to do. You can get in trouble for that. You have to tell them what the offer is, even if it's crappy.
Right. And that's really, it's unfortunate. I don't know. It's unfortunate that sometimes there are clients who I feel like they're actually trying to game me too. Like I'm not going to work very hard for them if I know they'll take a certain amount, and that's just not the way I operate. But that's okay. I love what I do. I think that what I do is necessary. It's different. It's different for me than what you have, because I'm dealing with insurance companies. So at the end of the case, usually the insurance company writes the check. But yeah, when I see the way that some of these people, when they come into me, the way that the insurance companies have treated them, it makes me, and when I see, quite frankly, what they do to these people at trial and through the process, it's very gratifying to get the jury to award and really hammer on them. It feels good. It feels great.
Listen, never. You can say what you want about. Of course, you're not this, but the ambulance chaser or whatever. But guess what? I mean, if it was left up to just the insurance companies, they would do that famous. Was it the Travolta movie? Say no until the first 2 times say no, and don't say yes till the 3rd time, because 80% of the people stop asking. The only way to hold companies like this to any sort of account is hitting them in the wallet, and the only people that do that are guys like you.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring up ambulance chasers, because I will tell you, in my line of work, there are those. There are people out there who they're churn and burn. They're usually on commercials. They're usually, the guys on billboards. Not all of them. There's some very good ones out there that do that, but there's some out there, and that's just not my business. I'm a trial attorney. That's what I want to do. I will take cases to trial. There's a lot of personal injury attorneys out there, because we're on a contingency fee basis. They think to themselves, oh, well, I'm a contingency fee guy, which means I get paid based on the case, not per the hour. So if I work less, I make more money per hour.
Correct.
But that's just not the way I work at it. The way I work at it is I go, okay, if I do a great job for all of these clients and these insurance companies know that I'm not going to bend, that's only benefiting the future clients. Every single time, and it gets me value on the cases, and my whole firm is like that. It's just the way I was raised in the law. I've been at the same firm. I'm a partner here, and I've been at the same firm I've been an attorney 11 years now, and 14 years at this firm, and it's just the way we operate. So
good for you. So yes, I've enjoyed it too, and I would be happy to come back anytime. This is You're a wonderfully thoughtful conversationalist.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Let me ask you one last question before we let you go.
Yes.
One day, hopefully 40 years or even more with AI down the road, you're going to pass away and you're going to have a funeral. What would you like, the one thing you'd like someone to say about you in your eulogy?
He wasn't an asshole. Um,
Depends on who's
yeah,
asking, I
yeah,
suppose.
that's
Who's
fair.
saying it.
I gave my dad's eulogy, and all I really care about is talking about the fun, good stuff that that people have done. So in my case, I would want to, frankly, I'd want to have somebody talk about the musical stuff and the traveling and all the good stuff, and just that I got to live a full life.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, dude, one day we're going to have you come back and just talk music. Because if you're into
Absolutely.
80s hair metal, man, we're going to have to get in here and
I'm
start
all over
talking
it. I
about.
can talk chapter and verse, Josh. I'd look forward
Right,
to it.
right on, man. Well, thank you for coming on. And I'm supposed to tell everybody subscribe to the podcast. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. This
Yep.
has been a great conversation.
Do subscribe, everyone. And thank you, Josh.